as the title says, I work for Sysdig, and I've been using MicroK8s basically as a lab environment, not just for myself, but I've automated it in a way and distributed it where a number of my colleagues are using it, so that we have some consistency between how we approach our lab environments. So who am I? So I'm now the sales engineer for Sysdig in Australia. Been with Sysdig now for about a year. But before that, I was a solutions architect with Amazon Web Services for just under 5 years. And I was the specialist solutions architect covering their container offerings in Australia and New Zealand, so ECS and EKS. And before that, I led an internal platform team at Atlassian, deploying containers to AWS before Kubernetes was even a thing. I remember arguing about it at like version 0.9 when it didn't even have role-based access control. So we ended up doing what every tech company does and built our own, which I think, if I understand correctly, they're still running some of the bits of our own even after all these years. But they're in the process of moving to Kubernetes themselves now. So I ended up, like I said, at Sysdig. And what Sysdig do is security for Kubernetes as a commercial offering called Sysdig Secure. We also actually have a monitoring platform, which is kind of Prometheus as a service as well. So, I mean, you could argue we both secure and operationalize Kubernetes kind of as our business. But one of the things that we've done is the core of our agent, not only have we open sourced it, but we gave it to the CNCF, and so that's Falco. And so this is basically it's a pluggable, open source project where you can take any kind of stream of information, whether it's Kubernetes audit trails or Linux kernel syscalls, any number of things, and then you give it declarative YAML rules about what things you want us to look for in that stream of events, and we alert you when we see those things. So, in that Falco, giving it to the CNCF, we can't exactly call it ours anymore, but we wrote it and we still are contributing, quite a lot of the improvements and changes to it. And people like myself working for Sysdig evangelize it all over the world as well. So we're kind of quite closely related to that project. And given that's mainly what we're talking about here, I'll kind of just elaborate a little bit more on Falco. So obviously, this is an incubating CNCF project. We're hoping, that it will graduate in the not too distant future. And it's been quite successful, like, over 50 million downloads. We've had over 100 companies contribute to the project, and quite broad adoption, including some users using it at incredible scale, mainly for Kubernetes security, it being a CNCF project. That's the main use case, but we've seen plugins written for GitHub and for Okta and for all kinds of different services and SaaS platforms. That's the beauty of it being pluggable, is people can do all kinds of things with it. So this will be relevant to the MicroK8s thing. So basically, the way that Falco and our Sysdig commercial product work is there's an agent which is deployed via a daemon set, and this watches all the syscalls on the machines it's installed on via either a Linux kernel module or an eBPF probe. It also can be reconfigured to watch another stream of events like the Kubernetes audit trail or the AWS cloud trail, those sorts of things. And so it'll make more sense. I'll show it to you briefly in a moment, along with my MicroK8s demo. But I realize that I've been talking for quite a while, and I haven't tied this back to MicroK8s yet. So basically, imagine on my first day almost a year ago, I got handed my new work laptop, which was an M1 MacBook, and I was told that this was my job, like evangelizing Falco and helping customers with our commercial product. So it's like, great, how do I get a lab environment to play with this thing? And everybody did it differently. Usually it was a manual thing that they built that they couldn't give to me even if they wanted to. And it was almost a rite of passage, like everybody should just go and do their own lab environment. And so many people told me that, getting something up on that new ARM architecture wasn't going to work, and suggested I did it on like an AMD 64 machine. So I took that as a challenge. Can I get this working on my new Mac? And I, in the end, not only wanted to fix this for myself, in a way that I could kind of rebuild whenever I wanted, but I wanted so that other people that were starting with the company wouldn't be in the same situation where, they were trying to work out how to get going. And so why MicroK8s? So I tried a bunch of approaches, and the thing that usually broke my my lab journey with these tools was it needs either a kernel module or an eBPF probe to work. So this rules out things like kind. It rules out actually quite a lot of things. Like the Kubernetes built into Docker desktop, didn't work, in the ways that I expected. But most of our developers are working on Ubuntu machines, and so all the kernel modules are pre-compiled, bundled in, for Ubuntu. And so after trying a few other things, I stumbled on MicroK8s where everything just worked, including ARM, which surprised a lot of people. And because my two main machines that I was trying to do this with were a Mac and a Windows machine, and I found that not only do they give our staff a choice between those two, but they tend to be, even if you get given a work Mac, you might have a Windows desktop that you also want to work on. I wanted an approach that would work across both of them. And multipass has really been helpful there. I'll show a little bit about how that plays into this. So yeah, I mean, I was able to work out between the multipass installation wrapped around MicroK8s when you say that you want to do this on Windows or Linux, gave me a lot of ideas and really helped me to build, an approach that works for everyone. Also, for what it's worth, I also use Ubuntu. I dual boot my desktop between the two, but because we're tying into the kernel, I didn't want my desktop activity to get like scarfed up by our agent is suspicious, it's called. So I actually prefer to run MicroK8s, at least for this lab, in a VM on Linux rather than natively via the snap on my desktop itself as well. So it started out, with the goal of it being internal only, like to help me and my colleagues do our work. And I got it to the point where it takes about 5 minutes to fully spin up these lab environments, and it works cross-platform. It's reproducible. If you're not worried about breaking things anymore, because you could just quickly rebuild them. And then once I solved that problem, I forked it from the Sysdig commercial agent and product to Falco, which is part of our job in understanding and evangelizing that. And then it occurred to me as I was demoing this for a conference talk that I should make something available to the community that was a nice, easy to use Falco lab that anybody could pick up and quickly do what I was doing with steps that made sense. And so I've done that, and I've been promoting a workshop for the general public for Kubernetes. It actually goes beyond Falco now too, to cover a lot of the security concepts that people have in Kubernetes. And I've been seeing reasonable uptake so far on MicroK8s being kind of the thing that underpins this whole thing, so that people can follow this hands-on security workshop. So the last thing I'll kind of point out here, and I'll hint at this during the demo, you'll notice I'm doing things like installing Falco outside of MicroK8s with Helm. And I'd like to add it in as a community add-on. I think that would be even better than some scripts around it to add it. So I'll be looking into that soon. So that's enough slides. Let's have a look at some stuff. This is sort of what I've built for the Falco lab, the one that is public. So I start out with a script, and one of the interesting things is everybody that is on Windows has Git installed, which means I also have Git Bash. So for Windows, I had to do a couple things. So Git Bash, for some reason, if you don't put two forward slashes, it mangles the paths. And so I had to basically have this if to treat it like if it's Windows versus anything else. I also needed to DOS to Unix, some of the stuff I was sending over, or else it doesn't work. So I was able to kind of write this one script that would do Windows, as long as it was running under Git Bash, or Mac or Linux, if it wasn't. What this does is basically not only spins up a VM with multipass, but then it copies over this bootstrap file with the multipass transfer, which basically tells it to go and grab this Git repo and run a setup script. So the setup script does a few things. Not only does it install MicroK8s, but it then installs Falco. And one thing that I needed for my workshop teaching people about Kubernetes role-based access control and namespaces was I needed multiple users. And so I found a way to automate the creation of tokens for a couple, sample users. I add them to the known tokens in MicroK8s. And then I also create kube config context for both of them. So I can kind of flip around easily out of the box with the kubectl between context and show them, that two people are restricted to different namespaces, what that means in the Kubernetes API context. So in this version of the workshop, the Falco one, the only thing I'm doing that's kind of interesting is setting up this multi-tenancy through new users. And then I also need to enable Kubernetes auditing. So one of these Helm charts I'm deploying is Falco looking at the syscalls. This is a daemon set. And then there's another one, which is Falco watching the Kubernetes audit trail. And this is a deployment. And then I had to work out how to turn on the Kubernetes auditing and point it at the Falco that's watching the audit trail. So I did some scripting there to get that to work. I'll point out before I show you a few things here. This is part of a workshop where I've got a bunch of markdown kind of explaining all the different security concepts in Kubernetes, and helping people to kind of understand in a hands-on way. That's really what we were trying to accomplish with this. But now let's have a look briefly at what this does, and then I'll give you a couple other experiences I've had with MicroK8s, and I'll open it for questions. So this is like why I did MicroK8s in the first place and multipass, because the first thing that Falco does is it tries to load either a kernel driver or eBPF probe, and thankfully it looks like the built-in we've built in Ubuntu generic ones for all the major versions supported by all of the mainstream supported releases of Ubuntu. So this was kind of the first thing that happened with MicroK8s. All of our stuff works, and all the Falco's stuff works, which is good. I'll give you a real brief view of what Falco is, so that you understand kind of what this was all about. So Falco watches all the syscalls that happen on a machine looking for suspicious behaviors. So this is an example of kind of the worst possible zero-day you can imagine. It's a very simple Python app, but it basically will read any file on the file system. You give it on the URI path with a get. It'll write any file on the file system that you post to a URI path, and it'll execute any file on the file system if you do a post to the /exec URI path. So let's go ahead and use this for some interesting kind of exploiting. And the way that you can do that is just really simple curls. So, reading etc shadow, writing something to bin, apt installing some stuff in a container at runtime, doing some, network discovery tooling, running a crypto miner, using NSEnter to break out of our namespace, because the security playgrounds running in privileges that makes that possible. Just a few different kind of things we can do to trigger, what should be some suspicious activity. So if I go ahead and run this, it's making these curls to this kind of app that it could be your code was insecure. It could be, that this is a 0-day that hasn't been discovered yet. This is just kind of a bad example of one that might be possible. And now let's go ahead and I'll show you what Falco looks like real quick, and how it picked all that up. So we need to do a kubectl get services. And so the port should be 3282. And our IP here is this one. This is Falco. So it's been watching all of the syscalls, looking for a bunch of suspicious events that are in the rules file. So we'll just go ahead and search here real quick for playground, and you'll see all the stuff we were just talking about. Read sensitive files for our Etsy shadow. Launching apt-gets at runtime is usually suspicious. All the way through to like a critical, which is we saw you run a crypto miner with a common CG miner. So there's a list of all the common kind of crypto miner binaries, that sort of thing. So this is basically what we built, amongst other things this workshop to do is to highlight Falco, but I can spin it up on any machine in only a couple of minutes, already ready to work. So you can focus on learning Falco, and playing with that rather than having to get your environment up and running. The only other comment I would make on differences between what I had to do for the open source Falco versus our internal, a commercial offering is our commercial offering is less forgiving, at least with the Helm chart as it exists today, than Falco with non-standard paths for the container socket. And so I had to work out with that one how to change MicroK8s to put all of those things in the standard paths rather than our app adjusting to putting it in the snap paths, which is what MicroK8s did. I do try periodically because I've told them that we should expose these as Helm chart values. So every now and again I go and look and see whether I still need this, but it kind of removed the urgency when I worked out I could kind of do with SEDs, basically go and remove these snap common, variables and replace them with the standard paths like var run. But other than that, this looks very similar to what I was doing with the other workshop, the one for Falco rather than the one for the commercial offering. But yeah, so that's basically all there is to it. So it's been very helpful for me to have this tool available. It solved kind of all of our problems, and I've been very impressed. You release updates very quickly. They don't break anything. I've been doing this for a year, and I haven't had a single kind of negative experience with it. So thank you.
So should we stop the recording now?
Unless you have any questions you want to put in the recording, I'm open to.
So I have a couple. Is this work public somewhere?
It is. It's on GitHub. So it was in your meetup invite.
It's in the announcement. Okay, cool. Do you have any idea how many weekly active labs you have?
So I've only released this to GitHub, fairly well. I'll put it this way: I've only started promoting that it's on GitHub fairly recently. But I'm happy to let you know. I mean, it's been starred now, I think 8 or 9 times since I promoted it. But if I look at the, let me go ahead and look at the activity on the Git repo. Just one second. Oh,
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
No worries. Definitely, we will definitely need to see this as an add-on because it's like it's pretty cool, pretty nice.
Mhm.
And I have to also point out that this opens up potential partnership, opportunities like share promotion and all these things. This will go into the on YouTube, so everyone would know.
Yep.
Yeah, that's excellent work. I like it very much, and I would like to also test it and see exactly what I can do with Falco. Super
Yep, no,
nice.
sounds really good. I think, as much as it's interesting to have one Git repo that says how to install like a MicroK8s with a Falco on it, it's even better if I can just go MicroK8s enable Falco, which is the next thing. I've been meaning to do that for some time now, and this was kind of reminded me that I should prioritize getting that
Yeah.
done.
And it will also allow you to handle, compatibility issues. Like, for example, if anything changes on Kubernetes or in MicroK8s or in how you set up Falco, because the add-on is packaged with the release of MicroK8s, you don't need to, basically, these things will be solved automatically. So that's
The only thing, and I'll have this discussion with you all kind of offline. That audit bit of Falco, it's kind of like to change the MicroK8s configuration to enable auditing. I need to point it at that service that's already running. So there's this interesting kind of circular dependency-ish thing there where, I'm not sure if your average add-on is reconfiguring MicroK8s in the way that I would need to get the auditing, to get it to watch the Kubernetes audit trail. So that's kind of the thing that I put in the too hard basket when I first looked at it, but I'm sure there's got to be a way to do it. So I'll talk to you more on the channel in Slack, and we'll see if we can figure something out.
we can solve this over the PR. And actually, enabling auditing might be an add-on of itself, right? It's a fairly common use case that other users might have. So having a command like MicroK8s enable auditing,
Yep.
maybe with some arguments to configure it properly, would make sense.
So I guess one question I have for you, and I recognize that this could be solved on either side, but I have run into a couple dramas with things being put in the non-standard kind of snap paths. Like I said, I kind of go and move them, when I run my script at the moment. Was there any thoughts on the MicroK8 side if I could maybe pass it an option to say, like, I don't want to use the snap paths, I want to use something else? Or is kind of this being a snap like so fundamental to what it is that you wouldn't want to kind of have things outside of those paths?
So look, yes, on our side, it is fundamental in the sense that it will break the confinement of the snap. Snap is supposed to be a package that you can take it and move it from different distributions.
Yeah.
However, having said that, you are building a community add-on that can do anything. So I'm just saying, like,
Gotcha.
if you want to have these configuration changes.
So Falco works with it just fine. The bits that break on our commercial product, like Sysdig Secure, we do container runtime image scanning and a few other things. And it's those components that they don't really expect it to be in a snap path. And so, yeah, I mean, that one I'll take offline with you, because that's less the public use case and more our internal lab environments that kind of, or I guess maybe customers that want to play with Sysdig Secure, but with MicroK8s is it's kind of the thing they want to monitor. But yeah, I mean, that was a pretty trivial thing to work out how to fix. And I do understand the philosophy with Snap, so I won't push that too much further.
Cool. Okay. Yes, let's take it offline. Yes.
Sounds good. Any other questions from anybody that I can
Well,
answer?
I have one question, but I prefer to stop the recording first.
Oh, please go for it.